Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the breakfast news on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here are this morning's headlines. European Parliament Vice President backs India's surgical strikes on terror launchpad, says New Delhi deserves global support in fight against terror. Supreme Court directs Karnataka to release 2,000 cusecs of water per day to Tamil Nadu Supervisory Committee to visit Kaveri Basin from October 7 to 15 to assess ground realities. Three more deaths due to Japanese encephalitis in Odisha. Toll climbs to 30. NHRC issues notice to state government, seeks report in 4 weeks. Russia intensifies offensive to retake rebel-held east in Syria, sends anti-missile systems into the country amid growing tension with the US. And Maria Sharapovas' 2-year doping ban reduced to 15 months by Court of Arbitration for Sport. She was banned for testing positive for meldonium. Well, the European Parliament Vice President has come out in support of the surgical strikes that India carried out against terror launch pads across the line of control with Pakistan. EU Parliament Vice President Rizad Sarneki praised India for their approach to the situation. He also added that New Delhi deserves global support for its fight against terror. The views of the British-born Polish politician were published in an article in EP Today, the monthly news magazine for the European Parliament. He also added that time has come for the world to act decisively against terrorism and ensure that no terror group is assured of a secure haven in any part of the world. This support from the international community over the surgical strikes comes after the US, Russia, Bangladesh and Afghanistan supported India's move. Meanwhile, Pakistan continued to violate the ceasefire across the line of control, indulging in cross-border firing 9 times over the past 2 days. As the situation on the border remains tense, Home Minister Rajnath Singh visited the Kargil War Memorial in Dras sector.
As Home Minister Rajnath Singh paid tributes to martyrs at the Kargil War Memorial in Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistani troops continued to violate the ceasefire along the line of control. Pakistan violated ceasefire at least 6 times over the last 24 hours in Nowshera and Kulgam sectors.
The ceasefire violation has taken place in Nowshera sector and at 3 places. It started at 5 in the morning. And at 2 locations it has stopped, and at 1 location it is still continuing. No, there are no reports of any casualty as of now, and we are responding appropriately and giving a very befitting reply to the Pakistani unprovoked ceasefire violation.
Pakistani troops have been firing mortar bombs, automatic weapons and small arms along the line of control, forcing villagers to live on the edge under constant fear, take refuge in the bushes or hide inside their homes.
बहुत फायरिंग हो रही है रात से सुबह 24 घंटे से फायरिंग हो रही है पाकिस्तान वाले लोग हैं ना जो उन्होंने 5 बार इधर गोलाबारी की है सभी डरे हुए हैं अंदर छुपे हुए हैं बच्चे भी रो रहे हैं तो बहुत परेशानी हो रही है
हमारा जो अभी तक एग्रीकल्चर का सीजन चल रहा है कल्टीवेशन चल रही है मक्की और हमारी खेती की तो उस कारण लोग बहुत ज़्यादा डिस्टर्ब हैं और छुपे हुए हैं सुबह से कहीं ना कहीं कोई अभी बैंकर की फैसिलिटी तो है नहीं है ना ही कोई सही ढंग से बैंकर है और अभी जो माइग्रेशन की प्लानिंग है वो भी अभी अधूरी है
However, state authorities claim to have given adequate help and bunkers to villagers for hiding.
अगर सिविलियन एरिया में थोड़ी सी भी आती है तो हम एहतियातन के तौर पे हम अपने बॉर्डर विलेजेस पे जितने भी हमारे विलेजेस हैं वहाँ से हम लोगों को वहाँ से प्लान करवा देंगे और सेफ एरियाज़ में हमने रिहायशी कैंप्स बना के रखे हुए हैं और उसमें हमने पूरी व्यवस्था करके रखी है बिजली पानी राशन वगैरह और किसी भी किस्म की परेशानी नहीं आने दी जाएगी
Rajnath Singh reviewed the security situation in the state with state government officials in tow, briefing him on the prevailing law and order situation.
Political parties के delegations मिले, वहीं पर different सोशल कल्चरल ट्रेडर्स और रिलीजियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के लोग भी यहाँ पर मिले हैं और लोगों ने इस कारगिल के डेवलपमेंट को लेकर चिंता व्यक्त की है और उसका पूरी तरह से कॉग्निजेंस हम लोगों ने लिया है और जाकर संबंधित जिन मंत्रालयों से संबंधित काम है उन मंत्रालयों को हम रिफर करेंगे, आवश्यकता पड़ी तो संबंधित मंत्री से भी बात करेंगे।
The Home Minister also rubbished demands of proof of last week's surgical strikes carried out by the Indian Army. The centre has convened a meeting of Chief Ministers of Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Rajasthan and Gujarat in the wake of tension along the India-Pakistan border. The meeting with the Chief Ministers whose states touch boundaries with Pakistan will be chaired by Home Minister Rajnath Singh on Thursday and Friday. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, the Border Security Force on Tuesday disclosed that Pakistan has intensified snooping on the Indian armed forces along the international border. BSF Director General K.K. Sharma affirmed that unmanned aerial vehicle movement has been spotted very close to the Indo-Pak border in the recent past.
Amid increasing tensions in the wake of the surgical strikes by India, the Border Security Force is stepping up security on the western border. But BSF Director General K.K. Sharma confirmed they haven't ordered evacuation of villagers living along the international border.
जो लोग चले गए थे वो भी जहाँ तक मुझे जानकारी आ रही है दे आर कमिंग बैक। तो इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्री पे टेंशन जरूर है लेकिन अभी तक कोई अप्रिय घटना या कोई एक्सचेंज ऑफ फायर नहीं हुआ।
The DGBSF also denied reports of any friendly fire resulting in casualties in the terror attack on the Baramulla camp.
सजगता बढ़ाई गई है, इसमें कोई शक नहीं।
The Director General level biannual border dialogue between India and Bangladesh also concluded on Tuesday. In order to check infiltration, the border force also reviewed preparedness of the security mechanism along the eastern front.
दोनों फोर्सेस पूरी तरह से मुस्तैद हैं, तैनात हैं और किसी भी तरह की उस कोशिश को कि मिलिटेंट्स को बांग्लादेश के रास्ते इन्फिल्ट्रेट कराया जाए उसको कामयाब नहीं होने दिया जाएगा, इसकी हम आपको एश्योरेंस देते हैं।
We can say both BGB and BSF we are having sincere efforts and say intention to prevent any such kind of infiltration.
The BSF also confirmed a stone pelting incident near the Wagah border during the beating retreat ceremony held on 2nd October. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, Singapore Prime Minister Hsien met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi on Tuesday. Both leaders held comprehensive talks on a number of issues, including ways to enhance cooperation in trade and investment. They also agreed to strengthen cooperation in countering terrorism. Here's more.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi held summit-level talks with his Singaporean counterpart Hsien on Tuesday. India and Singapore signed 3 MOUs aimed at utilizing the technical and managerial potential of Singapore. 2 of the pacts are aimed at collaborating on technical and vocational education, while the third one deals with intellectual property rights to facilitate greater business-to-business exchanges and collaborations.
Prime Minister Lee and I also welcome the issuance of corporate rupee bonds in Singapore. It is a step forward in our effort to mobilize capital for India's large infrastructure development needs.
We discussed how India and Singapore can deepen our financial cooperation, and we agreed to appoint senior ministers on both sides. In Singapore's case, DPM Tharman Shanmugaratnam, and in India's case, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, to discuss how we can come up with new and innovative ways to cooperate.
The Prime Ministers of both countries agreed that defence and security cooperation is a key pillar of strategic partnership between India and Singapore. And that's why, as maritime nations, both sides agreed to keep the sea lanes of communication open.
As 2 maritime nations, keeping the sea lanes of communication open and respect for international legal order of seas and oceans is a shared priority. Our cooperation in the framework of ASEAN East Asia Summit and the ASEAN Regional Framework is aimed at building an open and inclusive architecture for regional cooperation in an atmosphere of trust and confidence.
The issue of terrorism, particularly cross-border terrorism, figured prominently in the talks.
Rising tide of terrorism, especially cross-border terrorism, and the rise of radicalization are grave challenges to our security. They threaten the very fabric of our societies. It is my firm belief that those who believe in peace and humanity need to stand and act together against this menace.
I express my condolences to the Indian government and the families of the victims of the Uri attack. Singapore strongly condemns terrorist attacks of all forms.
The Singaporean Prime Minister is on a 5-day visit to India, during which he will also visit Rajasthan on the 5th and 6th of October.
Singapore is significant for India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself has visited twice in last 2 years to Singapore. It will be interesting to see that how geographically smaller Singapore can synergize with geographically big India. Akhilesh Suman for Rajya Television with camera person Junaid in Delhi.
Meanwhile, Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi today. Wickremesinghe, who arrived in Delhi on Tuesday on a 3-day official visit to India, will also hold meetings with External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, Road Transport and Highways and Shipping Minister Nitin Gadkari and Minister of State for Petroleum and Natural Gas Dharmendra Pradhan. Later in the evening, he will call on President Pranab Mukherjee. The Sri Lankan Prime Minister will also attend the opening plenary of the India Economic Summit on Thursday, along with Minister of State for Commerce Nirmala Sitharaman. His visit assumes significance as India, citing Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism in the region last week, pulled out of the SAARC summit that was scheduled to be held in Islamabad in November. In other news now, the Parliamentary Affairs Ministry has called a meeting of all union secretaries to discuss key legislations, including the crucial GST bill, which are likely to be tabled in the upcoming winter session of Parliament. The government is seeking to bring forward the winter session of Parliament. The session is generally convened in the 3rd or the 4th week of November. The government is, however, looking to commence the session from the first fortnight of November. In the meeting, there will be deliberations about the bills to be tabled in the winter session. The concerned secretaries may be asked to wind up the work for tabling the bills at the earliest. The meeting is likely to be chaired by Parliamentary Affairs Minister Anant Kumar, who is working overtime to repeat the success of the monsoon session. Also next Thursday, the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, headed by Home Minister Rajnath Singh, is scheduled to meet to decide the schedule of the winter session. Well, it's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, the Supreme Court on Tuesday ordered Karnataka to release 2,000 cusecs of water to Tamil Nadu. The court has ordered the release of water daily from October 7th to October 18th. Meanwhile, AIADMK MP submitted a memorandum to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, appealing to him to intervene in the Kaveri issue.
A day after the Karnataka government released water for irrigation to Tamil Nadu, the Supreme Court on Tuesday ordered it once again to release 2,000 cusecs of water per day to the state from 7th to the 18th of October. The court also said the chairman of the Central Water Committee will lead a team to survey ground realities and submit a report by 18th October, the next date of hearing.
अभी आगे ये डायरेक्शन दिया है कि टेक्निकल कमेटी जाएगी, जो सुपरवाइजरी कमेटी का एक भाग है, एक तरीके का भाग है, और वो ग्राउंड रियलिटी देखकर कोर्ट को रिपोर्ट करेगी और फाइनल सुनवाई जो है 18 अक्टूबर के लिए तय हो गई। उसके बाद 3 जज बेंच ये सारे विषयों को सुनेगा और डिसाइड करेगा कि किसकी दायित्व है, किसकी ड्यूटी है।
The supervisory committee led by the CWC chairman G.S. Jha will visit the Kaveri Basin area from October 7 to October 15 to assess ground realities. Even as the top court pulled up the Karnataka government for its defiance, the state assembly passed a resolution that the state will release water to farmers in the Kaveri Basin.
And whatever may be the problem, we have to release. There is no option. I appeal to the farmers of Kaveri Basin not to go for any hesitation now. The government must stand. Whatever the losses, crop losses, we have to bear.
Meanwhile, the delegation of AIADMK MPs met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Delhi to seek his intervention on the issue. They also asked the centre to withdraw its application in the Supreme Court seeking modification of the order on constituting the Kaveri Board.
We people, on behalf of our MPs, went to Prime Minister's office, handed over the memorandum. See that the Kaveri management will be constituted quickly. We requested the Prime Minister to intervene in the issue and see that Kaveri management will be constituted immediately as per the direction of Supreme Court.
On September 30th, the Supreme Court had asked the centre to set up the board by October 4th. Its members were to travel to both Tamil Nadu and Karnataka to assess their needs. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari has warned of a water crisis in the country due to the growing population. Speaking at the centenary celebration of the Central Water and Power Research Station in Pune on Tuesday, the Vice President said that the increasing population has placed unreasonable demands on natural resources, including water. He cited the Yamuna River as an example of stressed water resources. Calling on policymakers to prioritize water conservation, the Vice President said that the entire problem lies in inequitable water distribution, non-utilization and ill-planned utilization of water resources. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Of stream results in flood, causing widespread loss of life and property. India's proverbial poverty amongst plenty is, to a large extent, related to results from the hydrometeorological conditions, inequitable spatial distribution, non-utilization and ill-planned utilization of water resources.
Moving on now, the launch of ISRO's latest communication satellite, GSAT-18, has been postponed by 24 hours due to bad weather conditions. The satellite, which was earlier scheduled to be launched from French Guiana in South America between 2 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. on Wednesday, will now be launched between 2 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. on Thursday. Carrying 48 communication transponders and weighing a massive 3,404 kilograms, the satellite will be launched by European Ariane 5 as it is too heavy for the Indian Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle PSLV to launch. Well, with Japanese encephalitis claiming 30 lives in Odisha's Malkangiri district, the state government on Tuesday chalked out an action plan to contain the disease. The death toll due to Japanese encephalitis, which stood at 27 till Monday, climbed to 30 on Tuesday, with 3 more children perishing. The disease has spread alarmingly in 21 villages under 6 blocks of the tribal-dominated district, affecting mostly children in the last 27 days. Extra beds were being arranged at the district headquarters hospital in Malkangiri, and more vehicles were being provided for shifting patients to the hospital. State Health Minister Athanu Sabyasachi Nayak visited the disease-hit areas yesterday and held a high-level meeting and directed officials to involve people in implementing the action plan in order to contain the disease. Meanwhile, National Human Rights Commission has issued notice to the Odisha government and called for a report including the steps taken in this regard within 4 weeks. The centre is in constant touch with the state government to contain and manage the situation.
There are 26 deaths till to time. The reporting may be for me on that on today. Still we are trying to take the necessary steps at the affected area, and the medical team already engaged in that area. We are taking precaution measures to prevent the Japanese encephalitis. The samples and also collected, blood samples, or whether necessary the CSF fluid is collected and it will sent to the RMRC also.
No, actually, today our secretary and team of doctors and also animal husbandry secretary is with us. We are taking the stock of the situation. and will try to take some steps to prevent the disease. And mainly pigs are the carrier of this disease. That is why we are formulating some steps how to isolate the pigs from the locality.
Some economic news now. Fuel prices have been revised again. Petrol prices have been hiked by 14 paise a litre, while that of diesel has been hiked by 10 paise per litre. The price change is with effect from the midnight of October 5th. Announcing the price decision, Indian Oil Corporation said that there will be corresponding price revisions on petrol and diesel in other states on account of change in dealer commission. The hike comes on the back of a 37 paise increase in petrol rate and decrease in diesel price by 8 paise a litre on October 1st. This is how much petrol and diesel will cost in metro cities after the latest revision. Now, the RBI Monetary Policy Panel slashed interest rate by 25 basis points on Tuesday. Softening inflation seems to have prodded the RBI to lower the repo rate to a 6-year low at 6.25%. It also exuded confidence on meeting the inflation target of 2 to 6% in the current financial year.
Some festival cheer is in the offing, with the RBI signalling a possible cut in your housing and car loans. In his maiden announcement, RBI Governor Urjit Patel slashed repo rate by 25 basis points to 6.25% from 6.5%. All 6 members of the newly constituted Monetary Policy Panel voted in favour of the rate cut. The reverse repo rate also came down to 5.75%. In RBI's 4th bi-monthly policy meet, Patel voiced concern over the swelling NPAs of the banks, while underscoring the need for a determined effort to remedy it. Patel also affirmed that only 5 sectors contribute 61% of stressed assets of the banking sector.
Our discussions were frank, often intense, but always friendly. We allowed each other to speak, and we ensured that there is no rancor, and that at the end of the day, we agreed on an MPC resolution that we have placed before the country.
The RBI also asked banks to pass the benefit of falling interest rates to consumers. The latest repo rate cut has caused a cumulative 175 basis points drop since January 2015, but banks have cut loan rates by only 70 to 80 basis points.
They have reduced the rates much lesser than 1.25%. The average which has been indicated in that report is about 0.5%.
Cheering the RBI's decision, the Sensex rose to 91.26 points to close at 28,334, while Nifty gained 31.05 points to close at 8,769. The RBI has pegged gross value added growth of 7.6% for the current fiscal and 7.9% for the next year. It, however, has warned of risks on growth due to muted private investment, weak global demand and geopolitical risks. Reporting from Delhi, with camera person Manish Bhalla, I'm Kriti Mishra for Rajya Sabha Television.
Moving on to some international news now, where in Syria, the Russian military has beefed up its forces with state-of-the-art air defense missiles. The country has sent an S-300 air defense missile system to its naval base in Syria's port of Tartus. The announcement follows Washington's move to suspend talks with Russia over Syria, while Russia says that the purpose of the missile system was to guarantee the security of its naval base. It caused alarm in the West.
Signs of escalation of war in Syria. Russian-backed offensive to retake the rebel-held east is intensifying on the ground. On Tuesday, Syrian government tanks crossed the front line in the battleground city of Aleppo for the first time in 4 years. Additionally, what caused alarm was the Russian military bringing an additional, more advanced anti-aircraft and anti-missile system into Syria. The S-300 surface-to-air missiles now deployed in Syrian port city of Tartus expands Russia's air capability in the country significantly.
Не представляет никакой угрозы. Более того, ранее, как вам известно, в регионе находилась аналогичная система в морском исполнении комплекс «Форд», которым оснащен гвардейский ракетный крейсер Черноморского флота.
The offensive came a day after Washington suspended direct US-Russia talks on a Syria ceasefire, accusing Moscow of having failed to live up to its commitments under the ceasefire deal. The fighting in Aleppo has escalated after Syrian forces with Russian air support launched an assault to retake all of the city. After a week-old ceasefire agreed to by Washington and Moscow steadily fell apart. The US and other Western countries accuse Moscow and Damascus of war crimes. Despite suspension of talks, both Russia and the US vow to continue pushing for peace.
The levels of violence we're seeing, the way in which the Syrian regime is indiscriminately bombing its own civilians, and their policy of starve or surrender, I'm afraid that seems to make a political solution at the moment impossible.
We will continue, as we have before, to pursue a meaningful, sustainable, enforceable cessation of hostilities throughout the country.
К сожалению, было с самого начала немало желающих эти договоренности развалить, в том числе и внутри американской администрации. И, как вы знаете, к сожалению, к огромному, вчера это удалось сделать тем, кто...
Despite the words promising to find peace in Syria, the ground reality is far removed. This crisis has been unfolding for 5 long years. Repeated attempts to set a viable peace process have failed. Ceasefires have come and gone. The latest truce collapsed amid a welter of mutual recriminations. And with Russia pushing ahead the government's intense offensive to retake Aleppo and the US looking to bolster its presence with other alternatives, the Syrian war seems to be going everywhere but towards peace. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, in other international news now, the European Parliament has overwhelmingly backed the ratification of the Paris climate deal. The vote was attended by UN Chief Ban Ki-moon. The vote paves the way for the landmark pact to come into force globally. The vote of 610 for, 38 against and 31 abstentions puts the European Union on track to hand over its ratification to the UN on Friday. It will then take the international community above the threshold needed for implementation. The EU environment ministers backed the fast-track ratification of the deal last Friday, despite the fact that only 7 out of 28 EU countries have actually ratified it since it was sealed in Paris in December. The accord needs ratification from 55 countries that account for at least 55% of the planet's greenhouse gas emissions responsible for climate change. With decisions in the last few weeks by China, the United States and India, a total of 62 countries have ratified the agreement to commit to take action to stem the planet's rising temperatures.
Ich darf Ihnen mitteilen, dass der Umweltausschuss unseres Hauses gestern Abend den Bericht zum Pariser Klimaabkommen angenommen hat. Damit ist die förmliche
I can't think of no better way to secure the legacy of Paris than to have the agreement enter into force in record time.
The 2016 Nobel Prize in Physics has been awarded to 3 British physicists working in US universities, David Stolz, Duncan Haldane and Michael Kosterlitz. The award was announced by the Royal Academy of Sciences in Stockholm on Tuesday. The 3 of them discovered totally unexpected behaviors of solid materials and came up with the mathematical framework in the field of topology to explain these weird properties. The Nobel Committee said that the discoveries of the 3 scientists had opened the door on an unknown world. The Nobel Prize for Chemistry will be announced today. Moving on to some sports news now, Maria Sharapovas' 2-year doping ban has been reduced to 15 months following her appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The 5-time Grand Slam winner was initially banned by the International Tennis Federation for 2 years after testing positive for meldonium at the 2016 Australian Open. She will now be able to return to the tennis court on 26 April 2017. Sharapova claimed that she had been taking the drug since 2006 for health problems and had not tried to use a performance-enhancing substance. She said that she was unaware the drug had been added to the World Anti-Doping Agency's WADA banned list.
The CAS panel in charge of this matter had to examine whether the player's fault was significant or not significant. The CAS arbitrators considered that Ms. Sharapova bore some degree of fault as she and her entourage failed to make sure that the substance contained in a product that she has been taking over a long period of time remained in compliance with the anti-doping regulations.
Well, I got a 24-month suspension, but they wanted 4 years from me, Charlie. The ITF wanted to ban me for 4 years. And I went through the ITF hearing, which in front of an arbitration that was chosen by the ITF. So I'm in a hearing knowing that the people I'm speaking to, this was 4 or 5 months back in London, the people that I'm speaking to were chosen by the people that I'm actually in a fight with. So that, I'm not sure, they call that neutral. That's not neutral. CAS is neutral.
That's it on this edition of the Breakfast News. Have a good day.